Today I'm reviewing this architectural digest tour of the Newberg residence, which is a really special home in rural Oregon. I'm pretty sure you're gonna like this place, but more importantly, I hope it'll open your mind to a different way of living, because this home is anything but ordinary. I'm here to maximize your home's resale value through good design, link in the description, but for now, let's take a look inside this home and see what's so special about it. Such a beautiful approach to the property, I love it.
My favorite architectural scene in all movies is when Dorothy opens the door, and outside the door it's color from black and white. And that quite possibly is the first time most people had ever seen color film in their life.
Okay, let me just set the stage for you here. This home has three distinct structures. The main house, which is about 1,600 square feet, a separate guest house next to the main house, which is about 550 square feet, and then a garage as well, which is also about 550 square feet. The home was built in 2013, and it sits on a man-made pond inside a vineyard in Newberg, Oregon, which is 25 miles from Portland.
And so if you realize that, then you can make the architecture amplify the place. I'm Jim Cutler, principal designer at Cutler Anderson Architects, and I designed this place about 10 years ago.
Okay, so a little bit on Jim Cutler to set the stage here. Number one, he's designed a lot of buildings that sit either on the water or right next to the water. So he's got a deep understanding of how architecture and water influence each other, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about as we get into this home. But number two is that Jim Cutler actually designed Bill Gates' house just outside of Seattle, which is 66,000 square feet and worth over $100 million. So he's no small-time architect. This guy knows what he's doing, and I think you're going to understand that as we take a look through this home.
We were coming down from that hilltop, and I noticed a visual clearing in the woods, and I said, "What's that over there?" They said, "Oh, it's an old logging pond, it's all filled in." And I walked around, and there's this wonderful tree stump outside here, and I said, if I was going to design something for you, I'd design something here, and I would integrate the building and the pond as one thing.
So let's just take a moment to appreciate that, right? He sees an old pond, which is, as you saw in that photo, hardly a pond at all, right? It's mostly filled in, it looks pretty gross, but he sees the vision for what's possible here, and he says to the clients, not the clients saying to him, but he says, "I want to build you a home right here." That's a man with vision.
Water fosters life, and I could somehow integrate a pond in a building. If we build it, they will come. Put it that way.
Look at this beautiful terrace. I didn't realize earlier how large this terrace is, but they've got, tons of space to entertain out here. But what I love that they've done, is not blocking this off with a railing, putting like a low concrete wall or something up here. Yeah, sure. Some people are going to say, "Oh, it's unsafe," whatever. It's totally fine. But what it does is it really integrates the pond with the home, and this is why you would build a home here, right? You don't build a home next to a pond if you try to hide yourself and shield yourself from the pond. You do it because you want to be integrated with that ecosystem. And just the simplicity of this terrace here, which is perfect for barbecues, for entertaining friends, all of that. Love it, and they totally nailed it.
And you can see that you sense the clearing just by the amount of sky you can see beyond these trees. And then as you come on the house, there's something special on the other side of that door. And we wanted to give some implication you were going to get there, but the door then acts as the foil.
Okay, so pay attention to this shot right here. This is the front door, and inside is a really large volume of space. But also inside, they've got floor-to-ceiling glass on the pond side of the home, right? But what's super interesting is that they've also got glass on either side of the door here. So as you're walking up to the door, as we just did here, you get a glimpse of what's on the other side, right? You can see all the way through to the pond, and it creates this anticipation of entering the home. And then once you open that door, it's boom. Here you are, a huge volume of space and an incredible natural view out the back side of the home. Wow, this is spectacular. Look at this, right? You walk in and this is the view. You've got the living room on the left side here, the dining table just to your right, and straight ahead, you can just walk right out into the pond, right? You got your swim trunks on, you can just run through the front door and dive off of that platform there. This is amazing.
I'm squeezing you because the tighter it is, the bigger big feels.
What he's talking about here is this idea of compression and release. This was popularized by Frank Lloyd Wright, and the idea is that when you compress someone in a space, which is often done in a hallway, a pathway, something like that, you feel that compression. You feel maybe a little claustrophobic, or at the very least, you notice that there's not a lot of space around you. And this was so important to the architects that they deliberately stopped the driveway 150 feet away from the home so that you'd have to get out, walk that 150 feet to the front door, and reset your nervous system as you do it. And architects do this because when you exit that compressed area into a larger volume of space, that's the release, and the space feels even larger than it actually is. So it's like you're getting squeezed like toothpaste out of a tube, and then finally, boom, you're in a massive space, and it just feels so good. That's exactly what he's done here, and that's the experience you have when you walk through this front door and hit this large volume of space.
But I don't want to be like, boo, to surprise you when you walk in the door. So I wanted to bring a little bit of the pond on that side. And I wanted you to see over the roof so you could sense the clearing on this side and create a level of anticipation of arriving.
Super interesting, right? So the pond is actually not even on the edge of the pond. It's literally sitting right on top of the pond. You saw a moment ago, it's on these concrete supports, right? And the pond goes all the way over to the other side of the house so that when you walk through the front door, first you have to walk across a pedestrian bridge, which is also on top of the pond. It's really interesting that they chose to do it this way. I mean, his explanation makes a lot of sense. I feel like 99% of architects who approach a project like this would have said, okay, yeah, we'll put the house on the, right on the bank, right? On the side of the pond where we have solid ground. No, they chose to do the exact opposite so that you get that anticipation, and by the time you're in the home, you're already on top of the pond.
So then you have to start using materials within their nature. Once you get going on a design, and if you're lucky, and if you're listening, it tells you what it wants. It's this sort of cacophony of different voices for me. The steel wants to show what it can do. The wood wants to show what it can do. The forest wants to show its history and its nature. The water wants to show how it fosters life. How do you take all that cacophony of voices and you turn it into a harmony?
Okay, so when you're building a new home, there's always the question of what materials should you use? And in a lot of cases, the right answer to that question is the materials that are sourced locally in your area. And it may not be for the reason you expect, but the reason to do that is so that your home looks at home in its surrounding context. So here in Oregon, it's a heavily forested part of the country, and so using a lot of wood makes sense.
Well, that's an 800-pound door, and that wasn't so hard to lift, because now you can see the leads all the way down here.
So smart. I love the way that this guy thinks, right? To build something like this where you can have a massive piece of glass as your door and lift it up as if it's nothing. I mean, he didn't even like that. It looked like he was moving something that was 2 pounds, not 800 pounds, right? Using essentially elevator technology here to raise this up and create a really special piece of the home.
You got to have a place to dive off. You don't want to splash water back on the oak floor. And, it just seemed like such a poetic spot to sit in the evening. You can take it all in. All the sounds, all the animals, everything.
Did you catch that? He said you've got to have a place to dive off, which says to me, this little platform here is not just a sitting platform, but this is actually their informal diving board. So like I said a minute ago, you truly can come from the front door if you're wearing your swim trunks and just go straight out here and right into the pond. And it seems like they've built the home exactly for that. And what a beautiful place to sit. you're going to get an incredible amount of natural light here because this side of the home facing the pond is facing south. And so at all times of day, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, you've got sun hitting these big glass walls, which means sitting here with your morning coffee or with a glass of wine in the evening is going to be a really special experience.
It's a nice kitchen. We'd wanted to have a window there, and it was also the best possible place for the range. It was a fun thing to design, and it works, shockingly.
Okay, now we start to get to see some of the interiors. So the kitchen, I like it. I mean, pretty simple, right? Just basically wooden finishes all throughout, but it fits the home because again, this is in Oregon where the natural building material of choice is going to be wood. So having an all wood kitchen just makes sense. They've got a view of the pond, but they've also got a view to the front of the home. So, you know, if you're cooking and someone is arriving, then you can see who's coming up the front pathway there.
That's a lot of load up high, so that if an earthquake wants to move the building sideways, well, it's going to do it. And the only way to restrain that lateral movement is with some degree of mass or a structural stability in this axis. So the fireplace is a structural element, and it's, for me, a statement about the lateral forces.
Beautiful, right? Just beautiful. This massive stone fireplace is definitely going to keep this home warm in the winters, because keep in mind, when you're building with so much glass like this, temperature control becomes a real issue. In the summers, you've got a lot of sunlight coming in, which is going to warm this place up. And in the winters, the heat is going to escape through the glass. So you need something like this fireplace to keep a place like this warm. Let's talk about texture for a second. In this frame alone, we can see the stone on the fireplace, several different types of wood, from the wood on the floors to the cabinets to some rougher woods with this wooden crate and the stool next to it. We've also got more of a coarse rug underfoot and this leather couch on the left. So a lot of different textures all in the same space, and especially because this is kind of part home, part cabin, it really works in here. All the different textures are warming up the living room and making it a really nice place to spend time.
The bedroom is pretty much all the same. In the sense, one thing I would say is it is glass between the living room and the bedroom because we wanted the roof, which is the sheltering element, to be one continuous plane. It would be a parrot to make this feel more like a pavilion. You know, when you think of pavilion, you think of an outdoor.
Okay, the bedroom looks pretty good. One thing that I really love in here is that they've got the back of the fireplace is part of the wall of the bedroom, which means that you're going to get a lot of heat out that way as well. And that means that both the bedroom and the living room area are going to stay really warm. So that was a really smart strategic move. Now the bedroom itself isn't particularly large, but because they've got the floor to ceiling windows here, and he said before, they've also got one of these raising glass doors so you can step out to the outside. It feels much larger than it is because rather than just looking at a wall that's 3 feet in front of the bed, you're looking at the entire pond. This is such a nice detail here, how the light is reflecting off the water on the pond and hitting the ceiling, so you get this kind of shimmering effect on the ceiling. I'm sure they have it all the way through the home, and it just looks beautiful.
You know, when you think of pavilion, you think of an outdoor area under a roof. My God, that cat has a regal pose. See?
I like the cat as well, but I also want to reflect on how simple everything is here in the bedroom. You know, not a lot of styling at all. They've got this multicolored rug sitting under the bed, but the colors are really muted, more natural tones. And then throughout the rest of the bedroom, we don't really have much styling at all. We've got this small dresser sitting next to the backside of the fireplace and a couple lamps on bedside tables, but even the art on the walls is very small, very unassuming, because what they're trying to do in every piece of this home is force your gaze outward. Stop looking at the walls, stop looking at your screens, look out into nature. That's why you're here.
And you have to walk outside to get the guest house. And I'll tell you, I built a little cabin for my daughter and myself. She actually helped build it when she was 11. And it's a wonderful thing, and it's only about 35 feet from the front door of our house.
Okay, so the guest house is very close to the main house, like he said, but it seems to achieve its purpose. It's definitely small, but it's also got some nice nature views looking onto the forest instead of looking back onto the pond. So if you've got family or friends staying over for a couple nights, then this is the perfect spot for them. They're separate from the main house, so they get a little bit of privacy, but they're also close enough that they can, be there for meals and you're still really living in the same space.
And there is not one night that goes by when I'm running back and forth and look out at the water or listen to the wind in the trees or look at the moon or what planets are coming by. And I had no hesitation.
Look at how this place looks in the evening. This is so nice with the lights on, soft, moody, warm lighting. It's so inviting here. It looks absolutely incredible.
We could take that and say it's clothing, right? Keeps you warm and dry. So if you're clothing the institution of family, you better know its anatomy. I mean, you're wearing a sweatshirt right now and might be from the Gap for all I know, but one size kind of fits all. It's got sleeves and a hole for your head and, a piece to cover your trunk. But in a way, that's no different than this house or the institution of family that you're going to clothe.
This is the third sliding glass door that he mentioned coming off of the kitchen area, and I really see this, along with the living room, being the two hearts of this home, especially in the summer months, out here with a barbecue, hanging out with friends, enjoying food and drinks. This is the place to be, right? For me, this is maybe the most special part of this home is this little patio area, and I'm pretty sure they're using this space all the time.
When you bring someone to an emotional understanding of things, of something that's beautiful, they learn to love it.
Wow. We didn't even see the bathroom before, but this is pretty special, right? These mosaic tiles on all the walls. I think this is a different tile on the floor. At least it looks that way with this light. But how about these tiny windows right next to the bathtub here, right? Definitely not big enough for anyone to see in, but just to let a little bit of light in. Really, really well executed. Okay, these drone shots really show how grand and spectacular this home is, but also how it fits so naturally into this landscape. And a big part of the reason for that is because it's using materials that came from this land. We don't see a marble facade here because that would be so out of place for rural Oregon. They're using cedar, Douglas fir, woods that are endemic to this part of the country, and that's why this home feels at home exactly where it is. So what are some of the things we can learn from this home? Well, number one, architecture and design is about so much more than the physical. It's really about the emotional. And so when we talk about compression and release, when we talk about resetting your mental state when you walk from the driveway to the front door, that's what we're talking about. How the architecture impacts how you feel. And so if you're designing your own home, you want to think about the emotional experience you're going to have in that space, because that's what architecture is really all about. Second, they deeply integrated with nature here in a way that most homes never even dare to. Rather than sitting on the side of the pond, they built on top of the pond so you remember where you are. And when you're here, you're not just looking at nature from afar, you're actually inside of an ever-changing natural ecosystem, and that's 100% by design. And then third, the small playful details really matter. Something like turning that platform into an informal diving board just shows that even at the highest levels of architecture, you don't need to be stiff. And actually, the best architecture doesn't just give you something to look at, it guides you to behave in a particular way. And in this case, it tells you to become one with the pond, to dive in and to enjoy this little slice of solitude. So this is the kind of home that quietly slows you down and reprograms you over time. So I'm breaking down a ton of homes like this one, so make sure you subscribe if you want to see more of these videos. And if you want to take what you've learned here to the next level, the link is in the description. And if you want to see another really unique home that's even more integrated into nature than this one, check out this video up here, where I break down a concrete home floating above the jungle in Costa Rica. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the comments.